Highways. Miles of empty road stretching through the darkness. You're alone in your car, headlights cutting through the night, passing through towns that are just names on signs. Most of the time, it's peaceful, monotonous, safe. But highways have a dark side. They're hunting grounds, places where people vanish without a trace, where predators wait for the perfect victim. Someone alone, someone vulnerable, someone whose car breaks down at exactly the wrong place and time. Tonight, I have 3 true horror stories from America's highways. Stories about people who broke down, who stopped for gas, who picked up the wrong hitchhiker. People who discovered that the most dangerous thing on the road isn't accidents or weather. It's what's waiting in the darkness between exits. Because on a highway, help is miles away. And sometimes, the person offering help is the last person you should trust. This is Last Night FM. And tonight, we're taking the long way home. Emma Garcia had been driving for 6 hours straight. The desert highway between Phoenix and Los Angeles stretched endlessly before her, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through darkness. It was July 2018, and Emma was heading back to UCLA after spending summer break with her family in Arizona. She'd left later than planned, around 8 p.m., thinking she could power through the drive and be back in her apartment by 2 a.m. But by midnight, exhaustion was winning. Emma's eyes kept trying to close. Her head would nod forward, then snap back up as she realized she was drifting. The white lines on the highway started blurring together. She knew she needed to stop. Driving drowsy was as dangerous as driving drunk. She'd heard that in driver's education. She just needed a couple hours of sleep. Then she could finish the drive safely. At 1:47 a.m., Emma saw a sign for a rest stop in 15 miles. Perfect. She'd pull in, lock her doors, recline her seat, and nap until sunrise. It wasn't ideal, but rest stops were designed for this. Truck drivers did it all the time. It would be fine. The rest stop appeared like an oasis in the darkness. A small parking lot with bathroom facilities, vending machines, and a few information boards about local attractions. Security lights illuminated the area with harsh yellow glow. Emma pulled into a spot away from the bathrooms, near the edge where it was darker and quieter. There were only 3 other vehicles in the lot. A semi-truck parked in the truck area, and a sedan near the bathrooms. Emma locked all her doors and checked them twice. She reclined her seat about halfway, pulled a jacket over herself like a blanket, and set an alarm on her phone for 5 a.m. She closed her eyes. The desert night was silent except for the occasional distant sound of a truck passing on the highway. Within minutes, Emma was asleep. She woke suddenly. Something had disturbed her sleep, but she wasn't sure what. Emma lay perfectly still, eyes closed, listening. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the asphalt, coming closer to her car. Emma's heart started pounding. She kept her eyes closed, kept her breathing steady, pretending to still be asleep. The footsteps stopped right next to her driver's side door. Through her closed eyelids, Emma could sense someone was there, could feel someone looking at her through the window. Then the door handle rattled. Someone was trying to open her door. Emma's entire body went rigid with fear. She fought every instinct telling her to open her eyes, to look, to react. She stayed motionless, playing dead, playing asleep. The person moved to the back door on the driver's side, tried that handle, locked, moved to the passenger side rear door, tried that handle, also locked, then around to the passenger front door. The person was methodically checking every single door on her vehicle. Emma could hear breathing now, heavy breathing. A man. He was right outside her passenger window, inches from her face, looking in at her. Emma could feel his stare. Her skin crawled. Every muscle in her body was tense. She wanted to scream, wanted to start the car and floor it. But something told her to stay still, to keep pretending. If he thought she was asleep, maybe he'd leave. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, the footsteps retreated. Emma heard them walking away, getting quieter. She waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. She didn't move, didn't open her eyes, just listened to the silence, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Finally, after 15 minutes of silence, Emma slowly opened her eyes. She lifted her head just enough to see out the windows. The parking lot looked empty. The same 3 vehicles. No people visible. But she didn't trust it. Emma very slowly raised her seat back to driving position. Her hands were shaking as she started the car. She turned on the headlights and immediately drove out of that rest stop, not looking back, not stopping. She drove for the next 2 hours in a state of high alert, checking her mirrors constantly, until she reached the outskirts of Los Angeles as the sun was rising. Only when she was in a well-lit gas station in the city, surrounded by other people, did Emma allow herself to breathe. She got out to pump gas. That's when she noticed something that made her knees weak. Her tires, all 4 tires, they had cuts in them, deep slashes in the sidewalls partially through the rubber. Not completely flat, but damaged, deliberately damaged. Emma's mind raced back to the rest stop. The man checking her doors. He hadn't just been trying to get in. He'd done something else while she was playing asleep. He'd sabotaged her car. Emma's hands were shaking as she examined the cuts more carefully. They were precise, deep enough to weaken the tires significantly but not so deep that they'd immediately fail. These tires would have blown out eventually, probably around 20 miles of highway driving. Maybe 30 if she was lucky, right around the time she'd be in the most isolated stretch of desert between that rest stop and the next town. And he would have known exactly where she'd break down, because he'd calculated it, planned it, cut her tires to create the perfect ambush point in the middle of nowhere. Emma called the police. They took her report, examined her tires, confirmed her suspicions. The cuts were intentional, professional, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. They checked security cameras at the rest stop, but conveniently, the cameras in that section of the parking lot hadn't been working, had been broken for weeks. Police told Emma about a pattern they'd been tracking. Several women whose cars had been sabotaged at rest stops along I-10. Most of them had noticed in time, like Emma, but 3 women hadn't. 3 women whose cars had broken down in isolated areas. 3 women who had accepted help from a friendly stranger in a truck who just happened to be passing by right when they needed it. 3 women who had vanished without a trace. Emma had been incredibly lucky. If she'd parked closer to the lights, he might have been bolder. If she'd been in a deeper sleep, she might not have woken when he approached. If she hadn't had the instinct to play dead and stay still, he might have broken her window. And if she'd driven just a little longer before noticing the tire damage, she would have been stranded in exactly the location he'd planned. The man was never caught. Police believe he's still out there, still hunting, still looking for women traveling alone, still sabotaging cars at rest stops, still waiting in the darkness for his perfectly engineered breakdowns to deliver victims right into his hands. Emma never drove alone at night again. Never stopped at rest stops, never trusted that any highway was truly safe, because she knew the truth. Predators don't just hunt in dark alleys. They hunt on highways. They engineer situations. They create vulnerabilities. And they wait with infinite patience for the perfect victim. Marcus Webb made a mistake. He knew it as soon as his car started sputtering on Highway 50 in Nevada. He'd seen the gas station 40 miles back, had noted his tank was getting low, but he'd thought he could make it to the next town. Save a few dollars by finding cheaper gas. It was a stupid decision, and now he was paying for it. His car coasted to a stop on the shoulder around 9 p.m. on a freezing February night in 2019. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, watching his breath fog in the cold air. The temperature was dropping fast, already well below freezing. He was wearing jeans and a light jacket, not nearly enough for a Nevada desert winter night. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal, of course. Highway 50 was known as the loneliest road in America for good reason. Stretches of 80 miles with nothing but sagebrush and darkness. Cell towers were sparse. Towns were few and far between. He had three options: stay with the car and hope someone passed by, walk back 40 miles to the last gas station, or walk forward an unknown distance to the next town. In below freezing temperatures, in the dark, none of the options were good. Marcus decided to stay with the car. Someone would come eventually. Highway 50 wasn't completely abandoned. He turned off everything to conserve battery, then turned the car back on every 15 minutes to run the heater for a few minutes. It was a delicate balance. Stay warm enough to survive, but preserve enough battery that he could signal for help if someone came. An hour passed. No cars. Marcus was getting seriously cold. His fingers were numb. His feet ached. He was starting to shiver uncontrollably. Hypothermia was a real danger now. He might have to start walking, even though that was almost certainly a death sentence in these conditions. Then, at exactly 10:17 p.m., Marcus saw headlights approaching from behind. He jumped out of his car, waving his arms, his heart surging with relief. The vehicle was slowing down. It was going to stop. He was saved. A pickup truck pulled over onto the shoulder about 20 feet behind Marcus's car. The driver rolled down his window. He was a white man, maybe late 40s, with a friendly face and a casual demeanor. "Car trouble?" the man called out. "Out of gas," Marcus said, walking toward the truck. "I know, stupid mistake. My phone has no signal. I've been stuck here for over an hour. I can give you a ride to the next town," the man offered. "Ely, about 40 miles up the road. There's a gas station. You can get someone to bring you back with a can." Marcus hesitated. His mother's voice echoed in his head. Never get in a car with strangers. But his mother had never been stranded on Highway 50 in below freezing temperatures. This wasn't a stranger offering candy. This was survival. "That would be amazing," Marcus said. "Thank you so much." "Hop in," the man said with a smile. Marcus grabbed his wallet and phone from his car, locked it, and climbed into the passenger seat of the truck. The heater was blasting. Felt like heaven. Marcus rubbed his hands together, trying to get feeling back into his fingers. "I'm Dave," the man said, pulling back onto the highway. "Marcus, I really appreciate this." "No problem. Can't leave someone stranded out here. You'd freeze to death." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Marcus was starting to relax, to feel safe. Then Dave started asking questions. "Where were you headed?" "Salt Lake City. Visiting family." "Anyone expecting you? Anyone know you're on this road?" The question felt odd, slightly off. Marcus's instincts prickled. "Yeah," he lied. "My brother. I was supposed to call him when I got close." "You got cell service now?" Dave asked, glancing at Marcus's phone. Marcus checked. Still no signal. "Not yet." They drove in silence again. Marcus started paying more attention to his surroundings. To Dave. To the truck. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. Then they passed a sign. "Ely, 28 miles. Good. 28 miles and Marcus would be in town. Safe. He could get gas, get a ride back to his car, and continue his trip. Everything would be fine. But 10 minutes later, they passed another sign. Ely next exit. Dave didn't take the exit. He drove right past it. "Hey," Marcus said. "That was the Ely exit. There's a better town ahead," Dave said casually. "Gas stations closed in Ely this time of night anyway." Marcus's heart started pounding. That wasn't true. Gas stations on highways stayed open 24 hours. Dave was lying. "I'd rather just go to Ely," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're going to the next town," Dave said. His voice had changed. No longer friendly. Flat. Final. Marcus looked at Dave carefully for the first time. Really looked at him. Dave's hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly. His jaw was clenched. And on his right forearm, visible below his rolled-up sleeve, was a tattoo. A strange symbol Marcus didn't recognize. Marcus glanced into the truck bed through the rear window. He saw things that made his blood run cold. Chains. Heavy chains coiled up. Plastic sheeting. A large toolbox. A tarp. Everything someone would need to restrain and transport something. Or someone. Marcus realized with absolute clarity that he was in a predator's vehicle. That Dave wasn't helping him. That Dave had been hunting. That Marcus had walked right into a trap. They were approaching a small town now. Just a few buildings. Stoplight. Dave slowed for the red light. Marcus made a split-second decision. The truck was moving slow enough. Maybe 15 miles per hour. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt as quietly as he could. The instant the truck came to a complete stop at the red light, Marcus yanked the door handle and jumped out. He hit the pavement hard, rolled, scrambled to his feet, and ran. He ran toward the only building with lights on, a small diner. He expected Dave to chase him, to jump out of the truck and come after him. But when Marcus reached the diner door and looked back, the truck was driving away. Dave hadn't even tried to follow, just drove off into the night like nothing had happened. Marcus burst into the diner, gasping, terrified. The waitress looked at him in alarm. He told her everything. She called the police. They arrived within 30 minutes. Marcus described the truck. The license plate, he'd memorized it after jumping out. Described Dave. Described what he'd seen in the truck bed. The police took it very seriously. They told Marcus he wasn't the first person to report something like this. Over the next few weeks, police connected Dave's truck to 3 missing persons cases along Highway 50. All men traveling alone. All whose cars had been found abandoned on the highway. All who had vanished without a trace. Police theorized they'd accepted help from Dave. Had gotten into his truck. Had never gotten back out. Dave was never caught. Police found the truck abandoned in a different state 2 weeks later. Wiped clean. No evidence. No fingerprints. No DNA. Dave had disappeared. Probably already hunting somewhere else. On some other lonely highway. Offering help to some other desperate traveler. Marcus never drove Highway 50 again. Never traveled alone. And never, ever accepted help from strangers. Because he knew he'd been seconds away from becoming another missing person. Another name on a list of people who'd vanished on America's loneliest road. Another victim who'd trusted the wrong person at the wrong time. James Patterson had been driving trucks for 20 years. He'd seen everything the American highway system had to offer. Beautiful sunrises over Montana plains. Terrifying storms in Tornado Alley. Traffic jams that lasted for hours. He'd met interesting people, boring people, and people he'd rather forget. But in October 2017, on Interstate 80 cutting through Wyoming, James picked up someone who would haunt him for the rest of his life. It was around 11 p.m. James had been driving since 4 a.m. that morning and was getting tired. He planned to stop at the next truck stop for the night. That's when he saw her. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, standing on the shoulder with her thumb out. She was wearing jeans, a hoodie, and carrying a large duffel bag. James normally didn't pick up hitchhikers. Company policy forbade it. Insurance liability. But something about seeing a young woman alone on a dark highway made him uneasy. If he didn't pick her up, someone else would. Someone who might have bad intentions. At least with James, she'd be safe. He pulled over, rolled down the passenger window. "Where you headed?" he called out. "West," she said. "Anywhere west. I can take you as far as the next truck stop. About 60 miles. That work?" She smiled. "That works. Thank you." She climbed into the cab and put her duffel bag at her feet. She was pretty, with long dark hair and sharp green eyes. But there was something about her expression that was hard to read. Not quite friendly, not quite threatening, just blank. "I'm James," he said, pulling back onto the highway. "Sarah," she said. She might have been lying. James couldn't tell. They drove in silence for about 10 minutes. James kept glancing at her. She sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead, hands in her lap. Not nervous, not grateful, just calm, eerily calm. "Thanks for picking me up," she finally said. "Not everyone stops anymore. It's not safe out here for someone alone," James said. "No," she agreed. "It's really not." Another silence. Then Sarah started talking. "The last person who picked me up wasn't as nice as you." "Oh yeah," James said, making conversation. "Yeah, he seemed nice at first. Friendly. Asked me where I was going. Then about 20 minutes into the drive, he started asking weird questions. Personal questions. Making comments about my appearance. I knew where it was headed." James felt uncomfortable. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "Don't be," Sarah said. Her voice was strange, flat. "I handled it. You got out of the car okay?" Something like that. The way she said it made James's skin crawl. There was something in her tone. Something cold. He glanced at her. She was smiling slightly. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "What do you mean?" James asked, not sure he wanted to know. "I mean, I took care of him," Sarah said simply. "He tried to hurt me. I defended myself. And then I made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else." James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Was she speaking metaphorically? Had she reported him to police? Or was she saying something else? Something darker? "You reported him to the police?" James asked carefully. Sarah laughed. It was a cold sound. "Not exactly." They drove in heavy silence. James was starting to regret picking her up. Something was very wrong with this woman. They were approaching a rest stop. James decided to let her out there. He didn't want her in his truck anymore. "I'm going to pull over at this rest stop," James said. "You can probably catch another ride from there." "Sure," Sarah said agreeably. James pulled into the rest stop. Sarah opened the door and grabbed her duffel bag. But instead of just walking away, she set the bag on the ground and unzipped it. "I want to show you something," she said. "Since you were nice to me, I want you to understand." "That's okay," James said quickly. "You don't need to." But she'd already opened the bag. Inside was a toolkit, but not a normal toolkit. Knives of various sizes. Rope, duct tape, zip ties, plastic sheeting, a small hacksaw, everything organized neatly, everything clean and well-maintained. James felt ice flood his veins. This wasn't self-defense equipment. This was a kit, Predator's kit. Sarah looked up at him and smiled. A real smile this time. "The guy who picked me up before you? He had a kit like this. He was planning to use it on me, but I took it from him, and I used it on him instead." She paused. "He's not going to hurt anyone ever again." James couldn't speak. couldn't move. He just stared at this young woman who just confessed to murder with the same tone someone might use to describe their grocery list. "You're wondering if you're in danger," Sarah said, reading his expression. "You're not. I only hurt people who deserve it, people who hurt others. You were kind to me. You didn't ask invasive questions. You didn't make me uncomfortable. You were just giving someone a ride. So you're safe." She zipped up the bag and stood. "Thanks for the ride, James. You're a good person. There aren't many left." She walked away into the darkness. James sat frozen in his truck, unable to process what had just happened. After several minutes, his hands shaking, he pulled out his phone and called the police. He reported everything. Described Sarah. Described what she'd said. Described the toolkit. Police took him seriously. They searched the highway where Sarah said the previous encounter had occurred. About 20 miles back, they found a drainage ditch. Inside was a man's body. He'd been dead about 3 days. Cause of death was multiple stab wounds. The man's truck was found abandoned 5 miles away. Inside, police found evidence that matched Sarah's description. He'd had his own kit: rope, knives, duct tape. He'd been hunting for victims, and he'd found one, but she turned out to be something he hadn't anticipated. Police searched for Sarah for months. They had James's description. They had evidence, but she vanished completely. No trace, no sightings, no leads. She disappeared into the American highway system like a ghost. James never picked up another hitchhiker, never stopped at rest stops alone. He kept thinking about Sarah's smile, about her calm demeanor as she showed him her toolkit, about how she'd said there weren't many good people left. The most terrifying part wasn't that she'd killed someone. It was that she'd done it so efficiently, so calmly, like she'd done it before, like she was good at it, like she was hunting predators the way they hunted victims. Somewhere out there, Sarah is still on the highways, still hitchhiking, still carrying her duffel bag. And someone somewhere is going to pick her up. They're going to think they're the predator and she's the prey. And they're going to learn far too late that they made a fatal mistake. Because sometimes the hitchhiker is more dangerous than any threat on the road. 3 highways, 3 encounters with darkness. A woman whose tires were sabotaged, set up to break down in the perfect hunting ground. A man who escaped a predator's truck seconds before it was too late. And a truck driver who picked up someone hunting the hunters. Highways are perfect for predators. And sometimes the predators aren't who you expect. Drive safe. Trust your instincts. And remember, not everyone who needs help is helpless. This has been Last Night FM.